Welcome back to the Believe in Badgers podcast on the Believe Podcast Network, presented by betonline.ag. Once again, I'm Matt Perkins, joined, as always, by Badger legend, the Hebrew Hammer himself, Matt Bernstein. Bernie, how are we doing today?
We're good, man. Every day's a holiday on the podcast. I love it. We bring in guys, young, old. Now we got a young guy who's boots on the ground, who I actually work with. I'm so excited. David Pfaff. Did I say it right?
Yeah, said it right.
Damn, I think I say things wrong, but then I always say I'm right. Dude, we're so happy to have you, man. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you guys. I've been following the podcast for a while now. Love it. Have some awesome guests on, and I think that's what the people want. You got to get what the people want,
Got to give the people what they want. Absolutely.
Yeah. So just stoked to have a chat with you guys and, answer some questions and share some limited wisdom that I have.
Well, we're excited about it as well. And before we get into that, though, want to remind you guys that we are presented by betonline.ag, where they continue to be your number one source on all of the internets for your online sports wagering needs. You name it, they've got it. Super Bowl's over, it doesn't matter. There's NBA, there's NHL, there's all sorts of great European soccer if you're into that. Tennis, which is, which would be my favorite sport to maybe put a little bit money down here on here or there. It doesn't matter. They've got it over at Bet Online. So head on over to the website or use your mobile device to join. Sign up today. Receive a 50% welcome bonus with your promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV when you sign up. Bet Online, where the game starts. Where are we going to start today? Bern, where do you want to start today?
It's like the easiest intro. You have to read it, and then it's like, where did you start? And then we go, David, where did you start? So I just think it's funny, but it's great. But no, Dave, tell us, dude, you're a Wisconsin guy through and through. As I stalk you online, dude, you were Defensive Player of the Year in 2014. Take us to first off, dude, you're an Eagle Scout?
Yeah. Proud.
You can find anything on online. It's actually great. And you majored in community and nonprofit leadership. Look at you. That's it. You enjoy, dude, I love it. Enjoy snowmobiling, hunting, and watching movies.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was reading my bio actually right before we got on because I'm like, oh, God, they're probably going to.
What's your favorite movie? What's your favorite movie?
Okay, so Fast and the Furious 1. After that, it kind of just goes downhill. But my girlfriend and I have been getting into some really great thrillers recently. So we're kind of on that. I think we own or subscribe to pretty much every platform that there is. So if we can't find it, then we don't need to watch it. So, yeah.
All right, one question. Predator.
Yeah, good movie. I mean, cultural icon, I mean, it's definitely up there,
I knew that's why I loved you for a lot of reasons, but you just solidified it.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's an excellent film.
It does go downhill from there, though.
Isn't Predator the only movie that ever had two future governors in it?
Yes, in the same one.
Yeah, same movie. Yeah, it had two future governors in the film, Jesse the Body Ventura and Arnold. So we
digress here. But
what we do
in a
on
good
the
way.
show, Bern, David, that's literally the point of the show is to digress.
I agree. I actually like the second one with Danny Glover, but then after that, it kind of hits a hard right turn. It goes all over the place, and then it loops in with the aliens, which I kind of love. But it's bizarre.
That is kind of a twist that people don't, because they're both like monster figures, right? Yeah. So then But yeah, big fan of that and the scene. I think it's from Predator where Arnold meets the guy who his old partner in the movie.
Dylan.
You go, Dylan, and then they do the arm thing. That's awesome.
He's like, you've been pushing too many pencils. The CIA's got you pushing too many pencils. Believe me, I could do the whole movie. And then they loop it back to Prey, which actually was great. Mm-hmm. So cool the way they did it. It's the Predators aren't as advanced. I just thought it was awesome.
Sure. No, good stuff.
All right. So let's go back and talk about you. Let's not talk about my favorite movies.
Predator.
Let's talk about you. Yeah. So when does a little David, if there ever was one, start playing football? I mean, the culture in Wisconsin is pretty high. What's it like growing up in Wisconsin in your area, and like what's football mean to the state and to you?
Yeah. So great question. I want to take it back. Actually, when I was a young sprout, I remember my mom saying, I was sporty, in elementary school and stuff, but I didn't have anything that really stuck with me. And, I'm doing my homework at nights and my mom's reading through the rec book, the Mequon Thiensville rec book, and like, hey, you should do football. And I'm like, okay, Mom, I'm going to do it. And just took off from there, man. Loved it. Was actually kind of good at it. Didn't know, like, we ended my first game and I'm like, did we win? I didn't know anything about football, but it was always there. My mom is a rabid Packers fan. And it was steeped into my community from day one. Homestead and Mequon, it's huge. We've had great players come out of there. Shelby Harris, Ben Gardner, Darius Feaster. There's a lot of folks that have came out of Mequon that are great. And so, to be in that culture, winning numerous state championships and conference championships, I knew that if I start seeing success here, I could take this to the moon, so that's kind of where it started a little bit.
But you've had guys who've come in from different places. I feel like it's like you're born into this. You love the Packers. You love football. It is important at the state level. You love the Badgers. Like, what is that? Because we have guys from Florida and Texas who say California, who say the exact same things. I grew up in New York. Football was, like, to me, very important to the world of New York. Not really. So what is it like, though? Like football is life in Madison and in Wisconsin. Just give me some more. Like, Homestead is obviously, I know I've heard of that place. It's highly regarded. But how important is, like, having such, like, that culture and growing up there, being a part of your life?
I mean, it's huge. From Homestead, I guess everybody wants to, like, get to Madison, and that, that's if you're a student or a player, and just as something as similar as, like, we have kind of the same colors, like that red and white, and we're just rabid about it, And so, growing up, Wisconsin, I remember my first time at Camp Randall was 2007 for the state game, Homestead versus Arrowhead in the three-peat. And we ended up losing that game, but we won 2 out of the 3. And I remember getting to Madison being like, oh my God, this is like the pinnacle of society, like, you have this incredible 80,000 plus stadium. And then you have this Capitol and the, just everything. And so, Homestead was a great place to just start out and really kind of formed the way that, I wanted to kind of make my career happen. So
take us through, like, when you started, and then take us to playing at Camp Randall as a high school player. But start young, like when you started, you're like, oh, I put my helmet on. It felt really weird. Yeah. Go from there.
Okay, that's actually a good point. So my mom would always make fun of me because I didn't know how to put the old pads, they were massive, like the thigh pads, into my football gear. And so she was always laughing as I progressed through football. She's like, you're going to make it to the NFL one day, and you're going to still be calling me to put the pads, the thigh pads and the knee pads in your pants. And so, that once you said that was super funny, because that was definitely, a topic that has always come up. But yeah, started with, the Mequon Thiensville Cardinals, and that's kind of our feeder program to Homestead, and had some success there. When you're that young, you're playing both ways. You're just kind of figuring it out. And I loved it. And I was an offensive lineman. And then I switched to defensive line. And I'm like, oh my God, I can use my hands and grab people and do a bunch of different things. And so I just had a crazy motor. I had a lot of fun. And so then when I got to Homestead, I started on JV, and that was kind of a huge point for me, right? Because, I started to see some really solid success, and then just getting a couple snaps on varsity was huge, And then my second year, made it on, was doing the whole varsity thing, got a couple starts later in the season, and we ended up going to Camp Randall in 2012 against Wanakee, and they were on a 3 or 4 year winning streak. And so, had an awesome game, busted my hamstring before the game. And so I don't even remember most of it because, you're at the end of the season, you're banged up, you're sick, you're just a bunch of stuff is going on. But had an incredible coach, Coach Tom Fugate, who has had a bunch of great defensive linemen, as well as Fritz Rauch. He was a great defensive coordinator. And the man, the myth, the legend, Dave Keel, who is, I think, in the Wisconsin Football Coaches Hall of Fame. And hoisting that gold ball as a sophomore was just the coolest thing up until that point. And I always knew, I was like, okay, I can do this, and I want to play here. And then moving into my junior year, just having probably the best season, getting a couple of state awards, doing well, and then clinched, the offer from Wisconsin. And my recruiting was, I was blessed, right? Because my mom said, hey, wherever you get an offer from, if a school is willing to pay for your education, we're going to give them a shot. I don't care if it's, a MAC school or, Alabama. We are going to give them the time of day because that is just such a great honor. And so it started with Western Michigan, with the coach from Minnesota now, bald dude, PJ Flack. Yeah. And he was the first one to offer me. And, then you go through just a litany of things, NIU, starting small, and just kind of working my way up, Iowa State, Syracuse, Wake Forest, Wisconsin, and Pittsburgh, right? Pittsburgh, where Chris was from. And, that was huge because, he offered me there, and definitely appreciated the offer. But at that point, I knew that my eyes were kind of set on something just a little bigger, right? And so, and closer to home probably too, but then when Anderson gave me the offer, it was kind of one of those deals where it's like, hey, we got a scholarship offer for you, but you got to decide by the end of the night. And I'm like, oh my God, so I'm like crying because I know I want to go there, right? Coincidentally, that day, Michigan State called me as well. And so it was, I was into like a Boy Scout meeting actually. And I saw the call and, you get that 608 number, or you get that, I'm not sure what Michigan is, but I just picked up that 608 and he offered me and it was an easy choice.
Well, that's awesome. But was it from playing in Camp Randall? Like, was that when you did that, you were like, wow, this is pretty much top of where I want to go? Or you're like, it's still pretty cool, but I'm going to look around.
Yeah, good question. So, I knew I love Camp Randall. I mean, I'm just in love with that stadium, especially with the new South End Zone. I think it's one of the coolest stadiums, and I've played in some cool ones. Lambeau, that's top. AT&T Stadium, the Rose Bowl, name it. The Big House, even though I think the Big House is a little overrated.
Very overrated.
Massively overrated.
It's got a lot of people in it, but
it's not loud. It's not loud.
It's not loud. Nebraska. Now that is the loudest stadium I've ever played in. Not even a close second. So yeah, to answer your question, I committed and I'm a loyal dude, right? So, it was cool that, it wouldn't be too far away from home, which actually proved to be very helpful, during my college years. Cause man, when you get to college, you're on your own. And so to have my family semi close, that was huge. So.
Wait, talk about that. Talk about like what, because you really are on your own. Like, I'll bring back to my situation, and Matty P, you probably can give us yours, but like, dude, this is when you could fly with like as much baggage as you really wanted. And I flew with two like 50-pound duffel bags, which was basically all it was my boots, my sneakers, my sweatshirts. It was like jackets, everything I really owned that I wanted to bring to college. This is pre me having a computer and a cell phone. So literally you just get on this plane, you get off the plane in Madison. Think about this in like 2001, there's like, you don't have a cell phone. What do? You tell the cab driver, like, hey, I'm going to the Regent, and pray to God this dude knows who it is. And then you get there and they're like, okay, your room is up here with 2 people you've never met. And then you can't call anyone because you don't have a phone. So talk to me about like that mindset of like because you got there in 2015.
Yep.
You're much younger than I am, but like how do you deal with that? Because a lot of kids, even now, no matter how attached you are, dealing with that same thing. So just walk me through your situation, like what that was.
Yeah. Good question. So I actually walked right off the graduating stage from Homestead right into the next day. I started a college class in summer. So the transition period was violent. Let's say,
that's a good word for it.
Yeah, violent. And yeah, I mean, we packed up the Jeep Cherokee and made the 1.5-hour trip from Mequon to Madison to the Isthmus. And, we're staying right next to Camp Randall, and it's just so weird. You're trying to like figure out your identity, like I'm just free now. Like I can do kind of whatever I want, right? You're with these guys who are playing football with you, and you might not even have like your banking information set up. Like I remember I set up a credit card and I'm like, oh, okay, I have like $1,000 to spend a month. Like, what is this? It's crazy. Like my girlfriend talks about it all the time. Like there's no good way to prepare you for college and to be a student athlete that it's having 2 full-time jobs. It's just insane. And so yeah, you pack everything that you kind of need, and that's where the Boy Scouting came into play, right? Be prepared, right? And so I'm just putting stuff in my bags, and I'm like, well, I need this. I don't know. I'll probably be back home for Christmas, but who knows? And so yeah, man, you figure it out, and I mean, if you don't, you don't. So.
Sadly, there are a lot of people who don't. I mean, as we all look back, like we've made it, right? Us 3, and I'm sure a lot of people listening are like, oh, we did that. But when you go back and like you put yourself back in that mindset and that situation, really, it's hard. It's not easy. You are a single, like literal individual. You might have friends who are there, but you don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah.
So I feel like how important was it for you you show up? Who are your roommates? Like, who do you know already? I'm sure because there's a lot of guys from Wisconsin. So like, how important are those dudes when you get there?
Yeah. Well, all of my roommates pretty much in college, or for the most part in college, have stuck together. We're pretty good friends still. But I think my defining part of being at Madison, or one of the things that I really talk about when I talk about Madison and my time being a student athlete, is like mental health, right? I don't think that I had the best mental health there, because you just get there and you're like, oh my God, what's going on? I'm playing in front of 80,000 fans. But on the same side, like you have to learn so much, and you have a lot of resources and people to help you out. And so I was talking to Rob Booker, and I think you guys have had him on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. And I told him, I said, hey man, like it's going to hit you in the face, right? Just don't quit. Like, literally do not quit. Show up, have a decent attitude, and just, figure it out. And so, I was lucky enough to have friends from high school that came in to Madison, and they're students too. Complete different, different experience than I had. One of my best friends, Ben Gust, who's in Atlanta now, he had like no idea why I wanted to come home, and he's like, dude, you're in Madison, like live it up. And I'm like, yeah, like I'm living it up, but like also I kind of just want to feel something that feels homey to me, and Madison always felt homey, but there's nothing like a home cooked meal from your mom, and there's nothing like just chopping it up with the homies back home. And And so, the transition was violent, but I didn't quit, and I got my degree, and I ended up playing 15 plus games and having a career that, I'm proud of. Obviously, there's always things you want to, we all wish we could play. Always, totally. But, I can hang my hat on saying, hey, I did the best I could with my maturity level and the resources that I was given.
Talking about maturity level, dude, I was at the basement of maturity level when I showed up on campus. I was like, oh man, this is going to be easy. I still am. Every time I show up, I'm in the basement. I feel like there's more resources now, though, that when I was there, the football program had an academic advisor.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 academic advisors, like some GAs, and literally no one gave 1 or 2 F's if you were mentally there or not, as long as you played good football.
Yeah. Well, that's it.
Maybe that's just the way some of us felt, which is also not the right thing to feel. But I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah. Let's go back for 1 second. Did you take a visit, and who were your hosts, and what does that look like?
Good question. So I did take a visit, like an official visit. My host was, I think, Connor Sheehy, Alec James, Cheekway. He was there.
Dude, Cheekway gave me this sweatshirt.
Cheekway's a boss, man.
Dude, he's so cool. He's a cool dude. A good group, man.
Yeah, that is a good group. But it's an older group too. It's a group that had Anderson, that was with Bielma, who then transitioned to Paul Christ. So, learning from those guys were huge. And I don't even know if I learned much football from them, but I learned how to be literally a professional. Like, this is what we do, and you need to do it that way. And you need to appreciate when times are easy, because that's not how it's going to be, So I think that's the biggest thing I learned from them.
How long did it take for that lesson to actually sink in, though?
Never. No, honestly, the turning point was, I'm still trying to figure it out. I think we all are. The turning point for me in my career was definitely 2017, that regular season, undefeated Orange Bowl run that we had. It was excellent. It was fun. I started to really play, and that's, I have like a tattoo on my side of like a phoenix, and that was so important to me because, like I said, the mental health, figuring it out, like not quitting, turning that corner is so huge. And I felt like that season really turned the corner for me. So,
well, you bring up a good point about the not quitting. Yeah. Because now there's I don't want to say an easy way out, because that's really not fair, but there is a way out if you're not comfortable or happy. I think that the transfer portal to me was set up for people who hated their situation or hated being where they were, or were not just being the best human they could be.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's a minute percentage compared to what it is being used for. It's free agency to me.
Yeah.
It separates somewhere. Like, if I hated being at Wisconsin for some odd reason, maybe I'm drinking too much, I need to go somewhere else, to go to BYU, whatever. Yeah. That makes sense. Talk to me about, like, you say don't quit. You were a red shirt, then you missed the season. Like, a lot of people in your position probably would be like, listen, I'm out. Like, I could go somewhere else. I go anywhere. You mentioned Syracuse. You mentioned all these other schools that probably be happy to welcome you.
Yeah.
Well, first off, we love hearing redshirt stories, so just know we're going to get into that. But what's it like, that no quit person? Like, I love you for this.
Sure. Yeah. So, I committed to Madison for like a really large reason, was to finish. Like, there's been people from Homestead that have gone to Madison, and for whatever reason, it just doesn't exactly work out in the best sense. Like, no one's been an all-star player from Homestead at Madison. And so that was something that I really wanted to kind of have a chip on my shoulder, because we're a damn good program at Homestead. And, I wanted to just make my mark. And so, really figured out quick that, I would have to make my mark by just not quitting and being a gritty guy. We talk about being, smart, tough, and dependable. And that was something where, well, I don't know if I was the smartest guy, but I was going to have the best attitude, be the best teammate, and be the grittiest guy, because I wasn't the largest, but I you talk to some offensive linemen, and I gave them some really good hits, and it's a mentality thing. So yeah, hopefully I answered your question there.
You've always just come off as such a positive person. Yeah. It's but I love to hear the no quitting, because I feel like guys would really do well at Wisconsin if they stuck it out. I don't want to, I can't put myself into everyone's shoes, which is also not fair. But I do feel like there's something to be said about someone who perseveres through tough times and pushes through and does, I'm not saying Wisconsin, but it could be anywhere, right? Yeah. Like that the thought of like just jumping ship, and I'm not using the right terms, but leaving because you're not playing right away, or you thought you were, isn't always to me like the best character building trait, I guess. Yeah. But we live in this day and age, so basically anything can happen. Dude, so get in. So you show up, you're at the Regent, you're now, I'm assuming you like figure out you're gonna redshirt.
Yeah.
Because no one ever told me like, hey, dude, you're redshirting this year. They're just like, go over there with that group and never come back over here, which you figure out very quickly is not the starters. Yeah. What's your time like on the scout team? What was your time like as a redshirt? To me, you're the bottom of the barrel. Like I was there. I didn't even see my actual coach for like a year. So I didn't even know what Barry Alvarez looked like. I had to, download a picture. I'm kidding. That's not true. I knew what he looked like. But like, what's it like to you when you're there? Who's on the squad with you? And like, what share some fun stories.
Yeah, sure. Well, my first camp, I go against Ryan Ramczyk as a transfer, and I'm like, oh my God, this guy, and he's not even a starter. Because, the transfer rule at that point was, he came from, I think, Stevens Point, and now he's one of the highest paid tackles, in the league, and just the best offensive lineman I've probably ever played against. And so, the one thing that I took away from scout team was get off scout team as quick as you can and learn. And it is. I mean, you don't want to get your stuff kicked in for 2 seasons, and so that really put a fire under my ass when I started tasting that. Okay, well, hey, you're going to be on travel squad. You're going to be on travel squad, and so that really pushed me to be like, hey, I want to make my mark. I want to start really contributing, because I knew I had it in me. But the grind of college football, especially on scout team with Coach Rudolph, one of the best coaches I've ever played under or worked with, because he really cares. But wow, you don't want to be on scout team, man, when you're going against guys like Michael Dieter and Bo Benchwall and Micah Capoy, just a ton of guys, and a lot of them are in the NFL, Yeah.
Yes, I do know. Yeah. I do know. They're like, go block these linebackers. Like they know the plays are coming. You're going to ISO this dude. And you're like, Nick Ryson, come on, man. This is like the 17th time in a row. Yeah. And he sheds the block every time. Like I'm not good enough yet to actually compete with these dudes. Like, that was my harsh reality, was like, you're just not there yet. Like you're not. This is why you're redshirting, which I absolutely love, because one, I agree. Physically, I was ready I could kill anybody, but like I couldn't play football. I could be a battering ram.
Mm-hmm. But no, so I actually want to, pardon me, I want to ask you about sort of that group you came in with, because you came in, you guys were the first class that was was Coach Chris' class. And we've had a couple other guys from that class on with us. We've had Chris Orr, and talked about Dave Mormon. Yeah. And so we've talked about sort of, that it's a really pivotal group that you guys are, and it was a big class too. There were a lot of dudes, a bigger class, I think, than usual. 19 guys. I mean, but a wide variety of guys. Some guys. I remember Zach Bond was like a really, really late ad because Coach Anderson hadn't extended him a scholarship, and then I know Coach Chris, first thing he does is extend him a scholarship. So,
yeah, that was a good move.
Yeah, you don't say. You don't say. So coming in, what's your relationship like with the guys in your class, and sort of how did you guys sort of bond over sort of this unique experience of being recruited by one staff but going in under another one?
Yeah. Good question. So, I guess I'll expose Zach Bond here a little bit. I remember he's from Brown Deer, right down the street from me. And so we were pretty close. And I remember, I think it was the Packers were playing, I don't know, the Seahawks maybe. And he gave me a call and he's like, hey man, like, yeah, I don't know what a gray shirt means, but I think I'm taking it. And then like a couple months later, he's like, I got the offer. And I'm like, yes, you're awesome. And then, down the road, he has done great things and everything else. But yeah, that first class was special, right? Olive Sagapolu, Chris Orr, just tons of guys. But the thing that I want to highlight about that class is like we ended up having a pretty successful senior season. You know what I'm saying? And so on your point, Matt, right, that development is so crucial, right? Chris Orr, he developed, but obviously he was starting his freshman year. He's a different story. That guy's a different breed and one of the best football players honestly one of the best people I've ever just interacted with. And so I think it's important that people stick with it and you really stick with your class. I was telling a story today to one of my trainers at Sports Advantage, about Coach Kyle Costigan bringing us in as young guys. And he says, look to your right, look to your left. Chances are one of or both of those guys will not be here in your senior year. And that was it, So it was pretty crazy to be his first class and to kind of finish out with him.
What was the culture like under Coach Christ?
Yeah, good question. There's a couple of things with that, right? Coach Christ is a dad, man. He's he comes to work with his lunch pail and his hard hat and he does his thing, right? And when he does get fired up, it really fires you up because he doesn't do it that often, right? And so, the culture was by my senior year was the best culture that I've ever played in, or with. And it just stems from those guys, man, Chris Orr, Zach Vaughn, myself in my little microcosm of the D-line. Like I really cared about the D-line. I wasn't like an amazing player, but I knew if I just showed up every single day and did my thing that we would be successful. And so, you bring in Jim Leonard and what a great coach, just being the guy who's been through everything, the smartest football mind I've ever been around. I really loved that, you have Coach Rudolph, who's really fiery. You have Leonard, who's fiery, but more just like smart and he gets it and he's down to earth. And then Christ, who is more relaxed and, he's doing his thing and you can really, talk to him and not be necessarily intimidated,
And you had Aranda and Wilcox as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Aranda, he's done great things. And Wilcox, similar, great things as well. So the culture was just really, I don't know. It was just, it is what it is. You can feel it, you can't, that's the thing about culture, right? You can't always put words to it, but you feel it, so.
You say Jimmy was, listen, I agree with you. One of the smartest football players, also one of the most gifted athletes, not physically gifted, like he's 7 feet tall, but he played football like he was 7 feet tall. That's why he played on 4 teams in the NFL. He played 10 years. Coaches were bringing him to different places because he was that smart and could literally coach people. Mm-hmm. What was it like? He's not a D-line coach, but he's the D coordinator. What's it like to be around him, him to coach you on certain things, like just hear these bits and pieces of advice from like a guy like Jimmy Leonard, who coached for 7 years and pretty much was like the best defensive coordinator in a long time.
Yeah. It's simple, right? You get a guy from Tony, Wisconsin, who's just really knowledgeable, but why is he knowledgeable? Because he does the simple things better than anyone else, And so he is a little bit of a freak when it comes to athleticism, but there are a lot of other players that are probably more athletic than him or were. But just to hear from him, I remember, He was telling us a story about him in the league, and it was in the dog days of camp where he just like, man, this is rough, you know. And he put up a film piece for us, a piece of film, and it was like a hustle, right? It was like now I can't think of the name of the drill, but essentially it was run to the ball, right? And he showed us a different clip, right, of this guy is on a huge contract and has been starting 3 years. And this is the dog who's trying to get a spot. And to show us that, he's like, you guys need to be that dog, man. I don't care how talented you are. Your spot is not safe. But not in a bad way, you know, not in like you guys got to perform or you're cut, kind of how it is in college football. But he's just trying to inspire us, you know, by actually showing what he wants us to do. So
I love me some Jimmy Leonard.
Jimmy Leonard, man. Jimmy cooks.
He's just really a special human being. And I can't believe literally came from a place that no one could probably pinpoint in Wisconsin. It's like maybe, I think his high school, I think he went to like a high school of 100, something small. He said they played every position growing up. It's just unbelievable. I'm just so proud of him. So it's just crazy. But
so let's go back to your time on campus a little bit more. So obviously, like Bernie said, like you were in the business school, majoring in nonprofit, all sorts of fun things like that. What is your life like off the football field?
Yeah, good question. So, you know, still trying to figure it out. You know, I think I was in the School of Human Ecology, but did take a lot of classes in the business school for entrepreneurship. And I was a community and nonprofit leadership major, which is kind of what I do now, which is perfect for the university. And so, you know, wasn't the best student, but always, again, just showed up and, you know, tried, like sat in the front of the class, you know, might have not always been paying attention, but I didn't want to be that athlete who just was there to check the box. You know, I wanted to, you know, if I'm going to get a huge education, then I'm going to try to at least take advantage of it a little bit, you know, to whatever degree that would have been. Still got the degree. But yeah, you know, I moved around a couple of times. I wanted to kind of taste what Madison had to offer, right? So, you know, was staying in the Lakeshore dorms, DeJope, which actually my office overlooks now, and it's just such a cool feeling, man. Like full circle, I made it, you know. in my, you know, and it's just a small victory. But then, you know, lived on Langdon, right by the lake, and during the summer, and you know, you get to experience a lot of things on Langdon Street. And then, you know, lived in the by the sophomore slums, kind of that Regent neighborhood. Lived up by the stadium a little bit, and then found a home, actually an apartment, right next to the Kohl Center. So I would see all the games, you know, when people were going to the games, and then, you know, we get that, you know, student athlete ticket that are in like the nosebleeds. And so I got to go to a bunch of hockey games, basketball games, men's and women's, you know. So
I lived right by the Kohl Center as well, and that was one of the smartest things I ever did. Now, I didn't get a dime of either deposit back, but you know, that means we enjoyed it. So, which I for me, I think that's a great part of campus to live on. I will advocate for, you know, North Francis Street, you know, right around
Francis.
There. Yep.
The Bassett neighborhood and like North Francis, right by. It's perfect because if you're waking up late, it's 6.5 minutes to the stadium if you make all the lights, to get to my parking spot and down to the locker room. Because, you know, as a student athlete, you be waking up late sometimes, right? But you got to make it on time. And then you have State Street, you know, that's close. You have, and I worked at Wando's my senior year. You got that right there, and the lake, and it's just beautiful. And the key part is it was a little quiet, and there was a gas station right there. So if you had to fill up your moped or get some quick food, it was like prime for me.
Yeah. Wonderful spot. Absolutely wonderful spot. Yeah. I love it down there. But it's not on State Street, so it's not too loud. Right. You can actually sleep there too.
Yep.
Yeah. Can't recommend it enough for all you current and future Badgers.
Listen, they're having a huge problem. There's nowhere to put the students that are coming in anymore.
No. Enrolling the largest freshman class ever in the history. And
last year or this year?
I think it was last year.
Last year, yeah. And they can't find places for students.
And I mean, but that's the beauty of Madison too, because you have the city, right? So, and we're on the isthmus, which is like that.
Yeah, literally. There's no more land.
Yeah. No more land. You have to build up, but you can't build higher than the capitals. So then
which is amazing.
Which I love.
I do. I love that.
Would you want it any other way though? Like you want that to sort of be like the pinnacle, right? I mean, it's the state capital for a reason. It's a giant gold dome. Like you might as well show it off.
Every time I drive into the city, I still get the goosebumps on my arms.
And John Nolan.
Yep, on John Nolan or East Washington coming in. And I'm like, this is my city, and then you see Camp Randall and you there's a reason that it is the best college town in America, and it really is. It's one of the most livable cities in America too. And I don't think people know that. Got just tons of things,
I mean, we're out here advocating now for the city. I mean, they need to start paying us for basically being a walking advertisement for the city of Madison. Well, no. So
listen, I hate to tell you this, Matty P, but we do get paid to talk about Madison all day. You don't.
No, I don't. I mean, listen, I already work at a nonprofit. I'm very familiar with this world. You know what I'm saying. So if you need a hand, you know where to go. I'd be happy to rep the city and the university all day, all the time. No, but so like, what are some of your favorite haunts? We know Wando's, but like where else? Yep. Like where else can we find? Where can we find Dave Pfaff during the off season on a Friday or Saturday evening?
Well, I mean, when I was a student athlete, it was so weird. We just don't go out. Like, you get the house parties and stuff, but you have to keep it low key, right? Because that's a big thing is taking care of business off the field. And Coach Chris always would say after the games, he'd say after a big win, have fun, do not fall apart. And it's a spoken rule. You know what that means. And we're young guys, right? And so you want to have some fun. But yeah, loved Wando's, vintage, the W, and these places change. The bar scene changes in Madison, but like loved Piano Bar too, and just some of those places going up State Street, getting a little bougie, drinks and food get a little more expensive. But I think I experienced Madison more actually after I graduated, and I think some people will say the same. You're in that campus side, and it's just kind of it is what it is. You have kind of everything there, and then when you get out, you're experiencing places, in Atwood and the Willie Street area, and there's just some really cool places, man, in Madison. So
I couldn't.
And Echo more. Tap if I didn't plug.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like I felt that way. I felt that way as a fifth year. Yeah. Because I was working a job where I traveled all around, not just Madison, but Southern Wisconsin, and I had a lighter course load, so I could sort of enjoy and explore more of that. And
sure,
like that fifth year, I feel like I learned like 3 times as much about Madison as I had the 4 years before that. And I agree, like there is so much that we can do. Okay, we can stop being a commercial for the city of Madison. We can go back inside of Camp Randall Stadium or inside of the McLean Center. For you, when you got to college, what was the toughest adaptation for you, mentally, physically, emotionally, or otherwise?
I mean, mentally, right? Being taking care of your schoolwork and being a student athlete, right? The mental toll of just you wake up. Like I've never experienced anything like this in my life, and it really kind of changed who I am today. It really shaped that. It's waking up at, let's say 5:30 or 6 o'clock. Let's be generous. Let's say 6 o'clock. Waking up at 6 o'clock, doing that first camp. And you get done, and this was before like 2 days are not a thing anymore. Waking up at 6 o'clock and then going to bed at 9:30, 10 o'clock. And that was like a responsible, bedtime, because you have to be up again at 6 o'clock, and it's dark when you wake up and dark when you go to bed. And that will take a toll on people. And I know that's a universal thing that sticks out with people, is like just that grind, like, oh, got to do it again. It didn't have a good day. Doesn't matter. Do it again. But then you get to that Saturday and there is not a better high than running in front of 80,000 fans. After you get out of the smoke and you're just like, wow,
it's all worth it.
It's all worth it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change a damn thing. I really wouldn't.
I have to agree with you. I think the mental is definitely the hardest because physical is easy. You can only lift what you can lift.
Yep.
The mental to me, and what I feel like was probably the same for you, is literally you're asked to perform at a high level, not even just high level, like the ultimate level. You have to be, let's say, at lift group at 6 o'clock, but they expect you, no matter what happened yesterday or 5 minutes ago, for you to dominate the lift group. And that's not easy. The science literally has algorithms to tell them what weight will be your last couple reps are going to be the hardest reps you'll ever take. And then next week, they expect you to be better. Yeah. So you have to perform in the weight room. You have to perform as a student athlete. Because if you don't go to class or you're a jabroni, it's going to catch up to you. Like you could take a couple weeks off. Yeah. And you're going to feel great. And then that 4th, 5th, 6th week when dudes are on you and you're getting in trouble, it's going to be hell on earth. So you're performing at that level. I don't know about for you, but they would come to our classes and see if we were there.
Class checkers.
Class checkers. And if you weren't there, it was horrible. Because then they'd just be like, hey, JD, take this kid. He didn't go to class. And literally not going to class was like the equivalent of like literally killing 5 people. Yeah. That's what it felt like because the punishment was harsh. Yeah. And then you have to go to practice. And then you have to go to the study table. And you have to take care of yourself and go to sleep on time. So the mental is wildly like not spoken about how difficult, or I think it's more pressure. But you said never giving up is probably the easiest way to counter. Yeah. Just work hard. Just put your head down and grind. It's not as easy said as done, though.
Yeah. And I also think that is a lot of places, but Madison really Wisconsin prides themselves on that, just being a grinder. And one of the great resources that we have now that really started when I was a senior was our meditation and mindfulness with Chad McGehee.
Chad.
He's the guru. He is the guru. And he really, I was in that, I don't want to say dark space, but exploratory phase of like, I know my mental health is not doing great. And so I need to just do things, right, to help me, cope. And so it was mindfulness and meditation and doing things like sensory deprivation tanks because they're just really good. And we ended up getting one for the Badgers. And taking care of your body, I mean, I think Rogan always says it. He's like, the people that are really good at their craft really take good care of their body. At the end of the day, you need to. This is our vehicle of whatever. We need to take care of it.
Which I mean, totally. I can't say I did take care of it when I was driving through the bars in Madison. Yeah. But I want to pivot quick because your boots on the ground. Yep. And I'm sure you hear things, little whispers here and there.
Sure.
We don't have to talk about how crazy the transition has been, which to me is completely whack-a-loon. Yeah. From an outsider, I'm very excited about what I'm seeing social media wise, coaching wise. We've jumped headfirst into this business of football.
Yeah.
What are you seeing being so much closer to the physical team, and then 2, being a couple years off the team?
Yeah. I mean, I have the luxury of having friends still on the team. I think this might be the last class that I'm actually connected with. Guys like Rodis Johnson and I think Isaiah Mullins is still on the team or something like that. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of hype around this new phase of Wisconsin football, this new, transition period. And like a classic Wisconsin guy, I want to say that I don't want to hype it up too much, but like Barry Alvarez said, get your tickets now because I think as soon they're gonna be not available. And I think there's a lot of great things happening, and I'm excited for an alumni and a huge sports fan, and I think people should get on the boat. And I think it's important too that regardless of the success, I love Wisconsin because it's Wisconsin. I don't love it because of our record necessarily. I'm bought in, right? And I think people should understand that there's a lot that goes into this. And Coach Fickle is not going to wake up, and say, oh, how can I screw up today? He's going to do everything possible that he can to be a successful coach. And I think those guys, everyone's kind of riding that boat, hopefully at least,
No, I completely agree. I think it's extremely exciting. You know, it's hard because your guy was probably Jimmy, my guy's Jimmy. I loved him.
Yeah.
And then so if I separate my love from my I love Wisconsin,
yeah,
I think this is a great thing. And I think what they're moving towards is what a lot of people have pushed for. I mean, a lot of people, you and me we're brought in. I'm bought in. I literally could have a cartoon character coaching and I'd still love them to death. Mm-hmm. I could have Coach Chris Sweatshirt by Just the Sweatshirt coaching. And I would absolutely be so happy, and I'd go to games and I'd be thrilled. I think a lot of people, though, in this world, in this country, and especially Wisconsin and Badger faithful, did you know, we talked to alumni all day. They wanted a change and they want to win. Yeah. And I think what Mac has done has given us literally the best option to do it starting today.
I knew I loved Coach Mac the first time I, really talked to him, because I knew he's got the perfect balance between he knows what Wisconsin is, and he also knows we need change, right? And I've been harping this to donors, to anyone I'm talking to. Change and tradition are not mutually exclusive. We can highlight our strengths. Running back you, O-line you, having a great defense, hard-nosed, gritty defense. But we can also change some things up. We need to move with the times. And if that's with NIL, if that's with making, coaching changes, things need to happen. And I think, Chris McIntosh is and Luke Fickell is going to put us in the right spot,
Sadly, part of what you just said there involves the fullback going bye-bye.
Yeah.
Which is okay. I said this before. If we win games and we're winning championships, I'm okay. The fullback's gone. It'll still hurt me, but it's okay. Dude, I have a random question you mentioned the NIL. Do you see guys like driving around campus in sports cars and like balling out at places and like going to expensive dinners? Because I only say this because I had a scooter that crashed like 6 times. I just duct taped it. Yeah. I couldn't afford to go to Tornado Room more than once a year. Same. So like these dudes are making a lot of money.
Yeah.
I think I Google some people and I'm like, you never know if Google's that's true or not. Do you see any of this stuff? Like, what do you see on campus? Has that changed?
Lifestyles from what I've seen haven't changed, obviously. And I like to be nosy, right? I'm shameless about it, right? Because I also want to be an advocate for those guys. Now, they get all this money and it's like, well, you're still 19 years old. We don't need to be buying some crazy stuff here. But I think that's kind of baked into the system and I think we've done a great job of, like, when I was going to school, we have financial planners and stuff, systems in place to really show guys, like, hey, take it easy, be really intentional about what you're spending and what you're doing. But to answer your question, no, I haven't seen it. I think, it might change a little bit, and that's just with everything. But I think our guys are taking it in stride and hopefully being very smart, because it's a lot, you're hearing the headlines. There's a lot of money to be made out there. And hopefully they're leveraging their positions.
I mean, listen, I haven't seen anything too outrageous, which I think I'm proud of that.
I am too.
Not saying somebody can't buy a G-Wagon, but they could. If you're a college kid, I wouldn't. But I mean, that's just me.
Yeah, like when I see who's the Texas quarterback with the Lambo out there, Quinn Ewers, I'm like, dude, you're just asking to get that broken into and stolen. So no, but speaking of NIL, though, my favorite question to ask guys is, if you were still in school right now and you were still on the team, what would your ideal NIL endorsement be?
Oh, good. I've thought about this for years. And when NIL popped open, I was like, oh, well, just my luck, right? Just a couple years off of this great opportunity. I would start small, right? I'm kind of a guy who likes outdoorsy stuff. And so, I'd be getting like fishing gear and snowmobiling stuff and food. I'm a great cook, right? So I'd be getting the weird stuff, right? Like I want, double clad aluminum saucepan, just get some crazy stuff. I don't need like fancy clothes necessarily, even though I do like a nice pair of shoes and some good stuff. But that's the cool thing about NIL is like whatever you want, you can strike a deal with someone and there can be a mutually beneficial outcome, Well,
especially when you're tying into something that's already like part of your personality. Like I think Braylon Allen and what he does with the weightlifting, like that's so perfect. It makes so much sense for everyone involved. So
I agree.
That's the way to go.
I agree.
Well, we are at time here, so we're going to have to wrap it up here today. We cannot thank you enough for spending some time with us here today. Where can people find you?
In Madison, hopefully not at Wando's all the time, but at the foundation. Super excited about my current job as a donor experience officer for the Wisconsin School of Business, and you can find me also coaching Sun Prairie football. We have an awesome season coming up. We didn't get to talk about that a little bit today. I kind of forgot to plug it, but love that. So Sun Prairie, the foundation, and occasionally on State Street and Wando's.
That's awesome.
David, thank you so much for being with us, man.
Yeah,
we appreciate it. Yep. Thanks for listening to the Believe in Badgers podcast on the Believe Podcast Network, presented by betonline.ag. And until next time, on Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.